Hi, welcome back to Smart Building Series. Today I spoke to Bill Klee. He is CEO of Asset Mapping, a company based in London. And we just discussed some topics around obviously his business, what they're doing, but also around commercial office space and productivity and some of the ways that he's using technology to improve things like air quality in commercial office space. So, hi Bill, welcome, and thanks for taking the time to do the interview today.
Thank you, Jim.
Just quickly, if you could let us know, like, who are Asset Mapping, how did you guys begin, and obviously what's the idea behind the business?
Okay, so we're a tech company, we're a soft company, and we help building owners reduce the cost of operating their buildings, primarily. That's what we started off doing. We also help improve the environment for the tenants. And what that does is create an optimum environment for employees to work. So better air quality, better lighting levels, and actually the real reason we have BMS systems in the first place. Um, and actually, air quality is one of those things that really needs to be addressed right now, and we're seeing a lot of traction. But the company itself came out of a project during the London 2012 Olympics, where I worked for 4 or 5 years. And quite simply, there, what we were doing and the problem that we were solving is we were taking information from engineering drawings, CAD plans. We were putting that straight onto a Google Maps, so the engineers always had a up-to-date drawing of the latest design. And currently, the way that's done is you issue a drawing, and that can take 4 or 5 weeks before it's signed off, approved, and gets back to the engineers. So they were always able to see the latest design, and that's where the company came from.
Okay, that's great. And so a little bit more about that. How do you actually then go about getting data out of, let's say, different building systems, these CAD files, BIM models?
We treat the CAD file as almost that golden thread. And when I say CAD, that can also be a BIM file. And those systems already have the location, the ID, so an air conditioning unit, a generator, it has the ID, and also the type. So the object within a CAD system says, well, this is a generator. So we pull that information and we place it onto a Google map. So we import it and say, right, level one, and we import all that data. So now that data is within a database on the internet, and we start adding what's called context data. So context data can be when it was installed, by whom, what its warranty date is, and when it next needs to be serviced. So that gives us context. It allows us to pull data from CAFM systems, from asset registers. But the thing that we spend a lot of time on is connecting that to real-time systems. So we can connect to a BMS system, we can connect to a Internet of Things platform or sensor. So now you can combining all the disparate sources of data into a single database, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I've heard you use this term before, Uber FM. What I'm kind of interested is about this predictive maintenance idea as a game changer for facilities management. What's your opinion on that? How do you feel about it?
Yeah, I mean, Uberization, on-demand business, it's almost the next phase for buildings. Now, we can talk a little bit about predictive, but right now, today, we need to look at conditional based maintenance, how a device is actually operating. Now, right now, today, 87% of maintenance is reactive. So we only find out that there's a problem because of the results, such as the lights don't work, the air temperature is too high or too low. And then we send an engineer out to diagnose the problem and eventually fix that. Now, that can take multiple visits. So first of all, you need to understand the condition of the device, and we do that by connecting into real-time systems. And once that changes, we can send an engineer out with all the information that we've gathered to fix that device first time. So that's what we refer to as Uber FM. as a concept, as an idea. But with that data that we collect from the engineers' visits, for how long they spend on site, to the type of data coming from the devices themselves, we can start predicting failure. We know that it needs to be serviced in a year, but we can also say, well, actually, it's been used much more this year, therefore maintain it earlier on. And if you think about it, that's how we run and operate our cars. We have dashboards. We know that the oil lights come on, so we take it to the garage. But at the moment, we're driving the buildings. We're driving them blind. We don't have dashboards. We don't have that information together, and we're only maintaining them when something breaks. And that's what we're trying to change. That's what the industry as a whole is trying to change.
Yeah, I think that's actually really interesting analogy between this concept, the car analogy and the building analogy. Yeah, definitely something, and obviously this kind of shift in business model to something which is as a service as well.
Exactly, and if you look at a Formula One car has something like 480 sensors, where a building has 4,000. So there's a lot more data that we can do better things with. And that does allow us to take it from being an on-demand business model, it always costs you X per year to maintain this building, to paying for when there's a problem. Or even better, you pay per fix. So it's a different model, but it will save companies a lot more money. And it also, importantly, it means engineers become much more efficient. There's less frustration. They're not continually looking for data and people complaining at these engineers. They're able to be much more productive.
One of the other things I wanted to ask and talk about, where it kind of ties into what you were saying earlier about, measuring quality of air, measuring light, those kind of things. And obviously a lot of these issues really tie into wellness in a building, also hopefully improvement of productivity. How are you be able to measure those kind of things? And also I'm interested in whether you see those as a big driver now for technology in commercial buildings.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, there are lots of sensors coming onto the market, low-cost sensors. You can plug them into Wi-Fi, into Ethernet. You can use LoRa. You've got different types. You've got ones that you can use at home, and you've got more commercial, industrial versions. But look, let's face it, we talk a lot about tech, and it's a really exciting time. But we've got to remember why we go into buildings. We spend 90% of our time indoors. We spend a third of our life in the office, and humans we're fairly robust, but we have this Goldilocks region of where we operate and perform the best. Certain temperatures between 18 and 22. But there's also now, because of this industrialization, a lot more gases coming from cars, from different materials, from the carpets that we have within offices, producing gases that just isn't good for the human body. So we need to measure these. We need to understand how much of that is within our environment so we can get rid of it. And as we start becoming more aware of these gases, unfortunately, nowadays it's not smog. We can't see this stuff. We can measure it, and now we can start to get rid of it. And that can be done very easily. So we can buy low-cost sensors, plug them in, and what that allows us to do is to start increasing the amount of air changes within a building. And it's not necessarily always by, for example, sucking in the air in the morning when there's a rush hour, because that's just pulling in more gases. Maybe it's actually switching it off. So sometimes thermal comfort isn't necessarily the best thing to be doing. So first of all, it's about measuring this, and then we can do something about it. But what this means for building owners is they can reduce the amount of sick days. They can have a more productive workforce, because high CO2 means you get a little bit more sleepy. The right quality of light for reading is different to the light you need when you're using a computer. So understanding these and measuring allows us to create this really good environment for a happier workforce. And that's good business. This is like the Tesla idea. It's very good business. Everybody makes money. Everybody saves money from the operations. So smaller companies can afford nice properties knowing that their workforce is much more productive. They're much happier. You can retain them longer. And that is changing the market. That is the real reason we're living and working within buildings. And that's 90% of a company's cost is on its workforce. So yeah, it's the most important thing right now. Looking after the people that work for your company.
That's such a interesting point because, of course, as a knowledge-based, society now, like a lot of what we're doing is based in offices, and you're spending so much on recruiting and trying to retain staff. You need to be doing everything you can to make it a productive environment for people.
2 or 3 years ago, there was very little evidence to suggest a happy workforce is more productive, but we can show now that less sick days because of better air quality. So there is real evidence now, and I think that's why we're seeing some of these changes, and that's also being driven by the larger real estate investment trust. The building managers.
I just want to say, if people want to find out more about asset mapping, I'll put a link in the description of the video to your website. But is there anything else you want people to see about you?
Our website is the first port of call. We're more than happy to have a chat with people about what we're doing and how we can help. So we look forward to hearing from people.
Great. Thanks again, Bill. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Jim.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.